and welcome to SporTView 2024. I'm Jay Wyman, along with my co-host, Carlos Canto. And tonight we have a special guest, a strength and conditioning coach from Boston College, Nick Cidado.
Good job. Nick, welcome. Welcome to Holliston. Well, I guess we shouldn't say welcome to Holliston. You've been here 3 years now, is that it?
Yeah, about 3 years.
Okay, why don't you tell us a little bit about, to start, tell us a little bit about your journey, that, what led you here, what led you to BC, in terms of, your career trajectory, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I'm from Massachusetts. I'm from Easton. Went to Oliver Ames High School growing up. And, from a very young age, sports was my entire life. It's all I really cared about. I knew going forward, once I was done, in my town, that I was going to be a coach of some sort. I just didn't know what sport, because I grew up playing football, basketball, baseball, and to tell you the truth, I never had a favorite, because whatever season I was in, that was my favorite.
Yeah.
I had some success, and my team had success at Oliver Ames, and finishing up, I really gravitated towards football, and I kind of want to go the football route. I played quarterback, and I just love the game. I love how much of a team sport it is. And so I started looking at universities around. I wanted to go to college, and I ended up going to Bridgewater State, and I played quarterback there, was on the team for 4 years. And, after that, I had some really good mentors and some coaches while I was playing still, and they kind of pushed me down the direction of, if you really want to stay in athletics and be around sports, there's so many different jobs you can do. And I was studying exercise science because, I'll back up a little bit. As I was coming up at Oliver Ames, I really developed a passion for training and putting in the work in the off season, because I saw what it did for me when I got in season. And once I started playing in the games, I saw that having the muscle mass and being faster and more elusive on the field equated to more success, individually. And then I saw my teammates do the same thing. I saw their training pay off when we got to the season. So right out of high school, I knew I wanted to study exercise science, because we didn't have a strength and conditioning coach when I was in high school, but I definitely learned a lot about, the training process, just because our football coach ran the program. And so that's what I decided to study going to Bridgewater. And, from there, I finished up playing, and I started, looking for a job. I knew I wanted to, train athletes, because, like I said, I fell in love with the preparation process. And I didn't see myself being a football coach or a basketball coach, because what I fell in love with, and, I tell this to a lot of people, I actually almost fell in love with the process of training just as much as the game itself.
Sure.
So I love those early mornings.
Yeah, the grind.
Exactly. Training with the guys hard in the off season, doing the stuff that a lot of people don't want to do, so it pays off in the season. And I just wanted to be a part of that. So as I was graduating from Bridgewater, I started reaching out for some jobs, looking for some, strength and conditioning jobs and performance centers. And I was very fortunate to meet my mentor right away. He took me on as an intern at MJP Strength and Conditioning down in North Attleboro, so another local place. And he was actually the head football strength and conditioning coach at Boston College for some time. And so I worked for him, right out of, I got my certifications. I worked for him in the summer, and he saw a lot of potential in me that maybe I didn't see. I was coaching youth athletes at the time, so younger kids, and, I really started to love it. And he saw a lot of potential in me. He said, I've had some time in the collegiate setting, and I see a lot of potential in you, and I want you to go up and I want you to do an internship at BC. He goes, I used to work there. I know a lot of people there. I know the current director. And I want you to go work for him for just an internship. And if you don't like it, you can come back here and you can work for me. And if you love it, which I think you're gonna, you can stay up there and you can kind of find your career trajectory working with high-level athletes at the collegiate level. So long story short, I went right into that internship. And from day one, I knew this is the place I need to be.
Yeah, was that the light bulb moment? Was that when you said, this is what I want to do as a career,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As soon as I stepped into that facility and I saw how engaged the athletes were and how competitive they were, because I played Division III sports. We didn't have a lot of the things these athletes have.
Yeah.
And just seeing how committed they are. I mean, most of them are on scholarship.
Yep.
They were the best at their high schools, and now they're playing Division I, Power 5 sports. And the other thing is, too, I got to do my internship working with 30 different sports. So essentially every sport except for football, which is funny because that's where my background is.
Yeah.
So I instantly fell in love with, the fact that I get to work with so many different personalities and different ways to look at their sports and so many different biomechanics of sports. And I found that to be so interesting. And I got to deal with many different personalities, different coaches and mentalities. And you know, that to your point, that was my light bulb moment where, you know, this is where I want to be. So I finished up my graduate school. So after my internship, it was good timing again. They were looking for a graduate assistant. And so BC doesn't offer any exercise science, kinesiology, anything like that. So again, it was good timing. They were looking for a graduate assistant, and Merrimack College up in the North Shore actually offers some of those exercise science classes. So they said, hey, you did a great job for us for the internship. We want to keep you on as a graduate assistant, but here's what you need to do. You need to go get your education up at Merrimack in a partnership. You know, we'll pay for half the tuition. You'll do all your coaching, hands-on work with us. It's a 9-month program. You'll graduate, you'll have a master's degree, and you'll have another full year of experience in the Division I level. So I did that, and the way I started, I actually started in January. So typically, you know, the semesters, you start in September, but just based off timing, I started in January. So I ended up finishing my graduate assistantship the following year at September, but I still had a couple more months of school left. So I talked to some mentors, you know, what should I do next? This is where I want to be. I don't want to leave yet, but understanding that they're bringing in new graduate assistants. So they said, all right, we know some people in the area. Let's go do an internship at Harvard. So I went over to Harvard. I finished up my school, and I did an internship there. And again, they lead the country in numbers of teams. So they have 42 teams.
Yeah.
So the number of athletes that they have is great experience for any young coach. I learned so much there from that staff. And again, working with everything from, so there I did get to work with football, from football to soccer to field hockey, all the way down to squash and fencing and alpine skiing versus Nordic skiing and every sport you can imagine. So it exposed me to so much. And I finished that up. And again, perfect timing again. I keep saying that because I believe that everything happens for a reason. I get a call from Boston College, you know, as I'm kind of in the job market. And the director, Russ, called me back and he said, you know, I have a vacancy. You're my first call. I want you to come work for me again, come back to BC. And I've been there for about 5 years now ever since. I primarily work with the lacrosse, field hockey, men's soccer, and golf teams. But again, we have 30 there, so I'm blessed I get to work with all of them.
Yeah.
That's cool. So from there, now you got all this experience. You had years and years of experience, 5 years at BC and everything. Now you're thinking of writing a book. Talk about that a little bit. How did you happen to think about starting to write a book?
Yeah, so it's interesting. If you asked me even 2 years ago if I was going to be an author, I would have said no way. But sometimes that's just how life works. So I just did a lot of deep thinking when COVID happened and we're kind of away from work. And I thought about, you know, my impact as a strength and conditioning coach. And, you know, the essence of my job is to prepare these athletes so they can perform at their highest level when they go and play their sport. You know, mentally and physically, we're just support staff. We're trying to support them the best we can. But I really started to think about kind of my philosophies and how I implement our training sessions and, you know, all the extra things that I do outside of just prescribing sets and reps and telling them to run and stop and all that stuff. And I really thought about that, you know, my impact goes much further than that. You know, I'm almost a mentor in some capacity for these athletes because as a strength and conditioning coach, I don't control playing time like the head coach does. So I get a much more vulnerable athlete who's able to come to me in times when they're down on themselves or when they're really high on themselves, and I get to see them from a full year too. A head coach only really works with them in season, a little bit in the off season to train their skills. As a strength coach, I'm working with them in the winter, the summer, the fall, the spring. It's a full year program. And so I said, you know what? I have all these philosophies. I have my ideas of how I train these athletes. I think my value goes far beyond of what is in my job description. I'm gonna start putting pen to paper. I think I'm gonna write a book. And that's actually my thought process. And so I started putting pen to paper. I kind of outlined my chapters of what I wanted to talk about. And I needed a title for the book. And right in my office on the whiteboard is "Sweat more during peace, bleed less during war." It's a quote that I've lived on, you know, ever since I was an athlete. Just because it always resonated with me, you know, sweat more during peace, you know, work harder when things are...
Is that attributed to someone?
Yeah, so it dates back to an old Chinese proverb, actually, and it's been coined by many different people, U.S. generals, sport coaches, who really knows the origin. But it speaks so deeply to me because I train these athletes, I prepare them. So that quote resonates with all the athletes too. They actually know me by it. It's on my whiteboard when I send them home with their winter training packets and their summer training packets. It's right there on the program. And I said, you know, what better title of the book would be than something that's very genuine and authentic to me? So that will be the title of the book. And it'll be all about preparation, because that's what I do as a strength and conditioning coach. And so, like I said, I started putting pen to paper, writing down the chapter titles. And as corny as it sounds, the book really flew right out of me.
Started to come together.
Like, it was almost like I was meant to write it.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, I didn't struggle. I didn't hit writer's block one time.
No kidding.
Yeah. And part of that is because it's very genuine and it's authentic, and I don't make anything up. It's from my own experiences. It's from studying some great coaches, great business people.
Sure.
But yeah, it's if you asked me 2 years ago or any time before that, I definitely never would have considered myself an author.
Now, when you started out, did you know from the start that you were going to go all the way with this thing and publish it? Or did it start out as more as kind of like a passion project, something fun to do during COVID?
Yeah, exactly. I think it started off as just passion. I had I didn't even tell anybody I was writing it. You know, she was my girlfriend at the time, but I told her she was about it. I said, I'm going to start writing a book, I think. And she's like, oh, okay. She probably didn't even take me that seriously. And like I said, it just flew kind of right out of me. And by the time it was all done, I had my manuscript. I was like, all right, someone's got to read this. This could be worth something. Maybe it's not at all. I don't know any authors personally. I know nothing about the process, but I do know it's something. People are going to read this if I want to go forward, so it starts with somebody. So I had her read it. And, you know, she said she liked it, and, you know, maybe she's just being nice. So I was like, all right. Thank you for the feedback, but I need somebody else to revise it. And luckily, I had a friend that knew a publisher who's actually retired, so they took a look at it. And they're like, well, I really like the title. That could definitely sell. You know, it fits your realm as a strength and conditioning coach. It could definitely reach an audience. And you have a really good setup. It needs a lot, the direct feedback was it needs a lot of cleaning up in there, but it has a really good setup and flow to the book. And I think you should pursue it. And that was all I needed. I said, all right. So I get on Google, I start researching the process of, all right, what next? I have a manuscript, what do I do next? And so you go through the whole process of you try to find an agent, then you try to find a publisher, and then you're looking through contracts.
How was that? Was that, like, you had to find an agent first, right?
Yeah, so you essentially send out a query letter out to a bunch of agents and see if anybody wants to pick up on it. And fortunately for me, I had a few bites. And then again, that was just, it kind of snowballs from there. It's like, all right, multiple people are saying this is worth something now. Now I really need to do my due diligence and make sure I'm doing the process right. Make sure that if this work does go on, I want it to be genuine. I don't want a lot changed from it. So I had to do some research about, you know, how I wanted to move on from there with all these other people trying to be a part of it now.
Yeah. Now, did you bounce the content off of other people in the strength and conditioning community at all, or was it pretty much just your own stuff?
Pretty much just my own stuff. Yeah. You know, I did a lot of research on coaches and business people, like I said, and you'll read that in the book. But like I said, I didn't tell anybody I was writing it until it was actually done. And then even a few months after that, I didn't tell anybody it even existed until I had already signed a contract with the publisher.
Interesting.
Yeah, just because I really didn't know where it was going to go. And I didn't want to let myself down, didn't want to let people down. And at the end of the day, I wrote it to help people, not for the money aspect or anything like that. So I'm totally content with it. You know, it could totally flop on its face, and I'd be fine with it because I do think it will make a lot of impact to certain populations.
Yeah, one of the things we talked before we had just met, right? And I asked you about, do you have like exercises in this book or this? And no, it's not. It's both, as you said, both physical and mental preparation. And that, what I really don't see a lot of in sports at all the levels, I don't think, is the mental preparation. You talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the whole book's really just based off mindset and how you approach things. And I give certain principles and tactics throughout the book to help in any area of life, whether you're a business professional, whether you're in a relationship, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a teacher, whether you're going for a job interview. There's so many different applications to such simple tactics and principles. And I didn't want it to be specifically for athletes and you know, the training aspect, even though that's the nature of what I do. It goes back to, you know, my worth and my value as a strength and conditioning coach. It goes beyond sets and reps and exercise selection and all that stuff. It's more so about the mentality of how you approach practice every day, how you approach your training session. Are you gonna, you know, settle for less? Are you gonna push through discomfort? So it has all that kind of mindset stuff ingrained in a lot of the contents. And like I said, that stuff can be applied to absolutely anything in life.
Yeah, so your audience is not just, I mean, it is obviously set up for coaches, different sports and everything, but your audience is huge. I mean, as you said, relationships, business, and we know a lot of business people when they have speakers come in, a lot of them are sports coaches because sports is such a small microcosm of life, but it's, you can play in that little laboratory in there, right? So this is really for all kinds of different individuals in any kind of competition or even if you just want to better yourself.
Absolutely, and preparation is ingrained in us. We all have to do it in some capacity. Whether you're going to the grocery store, you need to prepare your list of what to get to make sure that you don't forget anything. Or, another example I like to use is, in the week you have to fill up your gas tank, right? Filling it up at the beginning of the week to make sure that it's filled, you can get to the places you need to go and you don't have to think about it. It gives you more time to be highly proficient in other areas of your life by being prepared and taking care of some of the things that you need to take care of on a daily life. And those are two examples. Everybody needs to eat, everybody needs to fuel up so they get places. So just those two examples right there prove that, and I have so many more in the book, of just about like, even if you're not a leader in a business, even if you're just an employee, even if you're not a head coach, you're an assistant coach, even if you're not the star player, you're a bench player, like all these preparation tactics and principles can help you escalate your life and attack certain areas of whatever you're working on to make sure that you're getting to the levels that you desire.
Yeah, you touched on a point earlier where, in this role as strength and conditioning coach, a lot of times you have to deal with these, elite athletes, sometimes at their lowest of lows, and you kind of have to boost them up. Sometimes at their highest of highs, and you have to kind of keep them grounded. Did you ever anticipate that type of, for lack of a better term, sports psychology would ever come into a job like this, or was that one of the things that kind of attracted you to a role like that?
So I learned about that once I was hands-on.
Yeah.
I fully thought in a lot of the education to be a strength coach in kinesiology and biomechanics, it's black and white, right? It's sets and reps and angles and all that stuff. It's not dealing with emotions. And once I got into the collegiate setting, that's when I was like, I'm having a lot of these conversations with athletes who, like you said, are really down on themselves. They're fighting for playing time. And they come to me because they want to put in extra work and they want to know how they can get better in certain areas so that they can get playing time. And then vice versa, athletes that are doing so much successful things, how do you stay at that level? How do you prepare some certain things in your life and the way you approach practice and training to make sure you stay there? And it's definitely not in the job description.
Yeah.
You learn that hands-on once these relationships start being formed with the athletes that you work with.
Yeah. Do you ever have to rein people in? In other words, don't do too much, don't overdo it.
Absolutely.
Anything like that.
That's a big battle that we face. A lot of overtraining and injuries happen from people wanting to do too much. So I do fight some of those battles too. And again, I work with 30 teams, so it's more prevalent in some teams versus others. Yeah. Like some teams you need to, kick them in the butt and push them a little bit. Other teams it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're practicing 4 hours a day, we're lifting 1 hour a day, you're in film, like you need to go do something else. So, and I'm not a psychologist. I don't have that degree, even though part of my education, we do take psych classes so we can have these conversations with athletes. And again, I'm support staff, so I'm just trying to support them the best I can. But it's definitely not something that you're trained for. You really have to adapt as you form these relationships.
I have a question specifically to youth sports. What is your opinion of these kids today who are focused on one sport all the time? They start the little kids all the way up through and they just do one sport.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on that?
I don't like to see it if I'm being truthful. Playing multiple sports, especially younger, exposes you to so many different other movements that can all be beneficial towards that one sport that eventually you stick with. And if you just play one sport, your muscles and your mind just get used to doing the same repetitive motions. And that's when we see a lot of burnout. So when we see plateau, and unfortunately that's where we see injury. So, our coaches, actually recruit athletes that play multiple sports. And unfortunately in the climate of AAU clubs and all these club sports that are popping up, these athletes are playing the same sport year round and multiple sports at the same time, which is great. But there's not as much emphasis on the training aspect and learning how to move your body, developing the muscle mass for, joint stability and, angles when you're sprinting and the mechanics that can make every youth athlete better. It just gets overlooked because people kind of want to skip over the preparation process of preparing yourself and just get right into games of competition, because that's what kids like to do. And I wish that a lot of coaches and parents would step back and expose them kids to as many sports as they can, let the kid find out what they want to do, and then develop a training plan or work with a professional that can train you for that sport. There's nothing I hate more than when athletes come to us in the collegiate setting already having like an ACL reconstruction or a hip labrum issue, because you're never the same athlete after that. It's the reality, and you can rehab like crazy and you can do all the right things, but you're just never fully 100% the same. And if you're already getting that major injury in high school, that's just going to decrease your performance once you get to collegiate level, even if you still make it there. So I hate to see athletes come in banged up to me. I really think they should be exposed to a lot of different sports and specialize later in life.
What about later in life? What about you get to be an old guy like me? Obviously golf, which you do work with that team. The latest fad, pickleball. All that kind of stuff. What do you tell those people? What would you advise those people to do? Yeah,
so you got to keep training. You can't expect to go out there. So look at the sport of pickleball, right? Everybody's picking it up. They think it's a little bit easier, and it is, because the surface area is shorter than, like, let's say tennis. But at the same time, watch the mechanics of the sport. It's side to side, forward, back, jump, up, down. All these movements that put stress on, your Achilles and your knees. And if you're not training, if you don't have the musculature to support your joints, you're going to end up with an injury. And unfortunately, as you get older, injuries are more prevalent, because you kind of lose that muscle mass that you have when you're younger through sarcopenia, and you lose that pliability within the muscle too to adapt to the movements that you're doing. So my suggestion is you got to keep training, you got to stay in the gym, and you got to do the right things. You got to do functional training. It's not, if you're going to play a sport like pickleball, let's say, you can't train like a bodybuilder and just do bicep curls and tricep pushdowns and try to look good. You need to be training for that sport a little bit, even if you're not trying to be a professional pickleball player, just so you can be healthy and have fun with it.
That must be why you're not so good at pickleball. You're trying to...
Well, that's one of the reasons, but there's probably several others. So now you got the book. What's next for you? What's in your future? Another book?
So potentially another book. I do have an idea for one. I have an idea for multiple. Right now all my focus is on, projecting this book out there, marketing this book, and make sure it gets in the right hands. Because again, I wrote this book to help make an impact on anybody who's willing to read it, anybody with a growth mindset, who wants to really take control of their life through preparation. I firmly believe I can benefit, athletes, business people, relationships, people just on everyday life-to-life basis can definitely benefit from reading this. But past that, a lot of my experiences are in athletics, and I'd like to put together a book, maybe tailored to a specific team that I work with. I've had some success training the lacrosse team at BC for the last couple of years.
Talk about that for a minute. Talk about the lacrosse team.
Yeah, so they're a great group. They've been to the national championship 6 years in a row.
This is women's lacrosse.
The women's team, yeah. And kind of what we just talked about is a lot of those athletes that play this sport specialize at a young age, and they don't know how to train. And I have a lot of, because of our success, not because of me, because of the team success, people reach out to me because I do train them. And they're always asking, what you should be doing at this young age, and how do I make sure, my daughter can get there, and all this stuff. And there's never an easy answer, but I can definitely say that exposing the athletes to multiple sports helps. We had, I'm not going to say her name, but one of the best lacrosse players to ever play the game in the women's game was on our team. She didn't pick up a lacrosse stick until the 8th grade. So that's a great example I like to use. She played basketball her whole life and then takes over lacrosse, and she's literally the best lacrosse player to ever play in the sport. She's gone on to win World Cup gold medals, and she's such an incredible athlete. But I would just inspire more athletes to be like that. And my point is, I'd like to write a book to kind of portray that, kind of tell athletes, and specifically in the lacrosse world, of how to train so that you don't show up in college with an ACL reconstruction already, and you can show up in college not burnt out from the game, and you're still high energy and you want to play. Because I think those things are important. So that's one idea, and I think I have another mindset style book. I won't get into the specifics of this one, but definitely on the same realm of this book that I'm dropping now, of just kind of like in the self-help world of mindset and really your approach to everything that you do, and how you can use it to benefit yourself.
Yeah, expanding on that, you very much, just like you did right now, describe the book very much as an approach, as a mindset, right? Talk a little bit about the buy-in that's required, especially at this level of college athletics, right? The D1 level. Like you said, we have elite athletes coming in. They were usually the best player on their team, best player in their conference, and now they're coming to a Division I, school where they're kind of at the same level as everyone else. What is it like to generate that type of buy-in into your approach where everyone is giving 100%? Are there any tricks or any tools of the trade that you utilize to make that happen?
Yeah, fortunately for me, I'm surrounded by athletes that really have it internally. I don't need to do too much motivation. I hate the word motivation because these athletes really need to be relying on discipline because they want to be great. They're on scholarship. They're getting paid to, be on this team. And, playing at the next level and winning national championships is always the goal for them. I try to look for, small areas of where I can make an impact. So when the whole team's in their training, how can I relate this to what you're putting in now is going to pay off in May when we play? And I like to use buzzwords for that. So the team reports in September, and I start them off pretty hard. We attack the workouts right away to set the tone for the year. But I try to always reinforce of what we're training for. I'm not trying to make you the best weightlifter in the world. Most of them don't even like to lift. I'm not trying to make you the strongest person in the world because your sport doesn't require that. The work that we're doing now is going to pay off in end of April and May. That's when we play the ACC championships, and that's when we play the NCAA tournament into the national championship. So it's kind of that buy-in of, I'm doing all this now, and that's what preparation is about. Everything that you're doing now, 9 months away, is going to pay off in May when we play for that big game or when we get down the line or late game when you're tired and you're beat up. You think about those early morning grueling conditioning sessions that you did at 22 degrees outside. It's hailing outside. It's snowing outside. But you showed up and you did that. And it was for a reason because that's going to pay off. That's going to be the difference between winning and losing for us.
And that's why you bleed less.
Exactly.
Right? You get that pain. You when the off season, you get that, develop that pain, do the pain then.
Exactly. So I look at the weight room as, sweat more during peace. Peace is the weight room. A lot of people don't see it that way, but for these high-level athletes, it is. Because it's a controlled environment. This is what you do it well, and you get what you get out of it, right? But when we equate, the end of the title there, war, bleed less during war, less failures and errors once the time of conflict comes. Once you're faced with adversity, there will be less errors and failures because of the more sweat and the more, rapport that you put in a time of comfort, so you're ready for that situation.
Yeah. Do you do a lot of public speaking? They ask you to go out and see a lot of these coaches and stuff? And also, are you involved ever with recruiting?
Yeah, so unfortunately, yes and no. The recruiting part, I don't go on the road, and the coaches, there's a lot of NCAA rules as far as recruiting, so I can't be a part of that. The only time I am is when the coaches bring the athlete on campus, and they usually like to introduce me to them, and I just talk about the weight room and my standards and why this program has been at the pinnacle and what we do that's different from every other school, right? We're trying to get them to come here, these top players. As far as speaking, every day I'm speaking to the team. It's a roster of 35 plus athletes, so I'm speaking to them about things, and I speak to a lot of teams in the area, local football teams and athletic departments, and I just try to relay this message of really everything that's in my book. So I'm really excited for this thing to come out so people can read it, and then also, I can get in front of them and talk more about it.
Right. And tomorrow's the big day, right?
Yeah.
Tomorrow's is when the book comes out.
Yep. So it'll be fully published tomorrow. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
It's been about a 15-month process from when I first put pen to paper, which is actually pretty quick.
I was just going to say, that's pretty short.
Yeah.
Lightning fast, yeah.
And part of the reason why is because, like I said, the writing didn't take me too long because it was so genuine and authentic. And it's a lot of my own experiences too, so I didn't have to do too much digging and research and interviews. Although that stuff is in there, it wasn't so scientific. It's really about the mindset, and that's why I was able to, come out so quickly. So yeah, officially tomorrow will be published, and I'm just so excited to get it in front of everybody.
And you can get it at all your local bookstores and.
Yeah, so it'll be available in brick and mortar stores, and online at Barnes & Noble and Amazon, IndieBound, and 30,000 other distributors. Yeah.
That is really cool.
Yep.
And if people want to get a hold of you to maybe do some speaking or to talk to some kids or whatever, what's the best way to do that?
Absolutely. My line's always open. I'm always happy to do it. My Instagram page is where I post a lot of the content about the book and what I'm doing as far as training athletes, as well as some speaking engagements. So that's just at Nick Cidado. And then my website, my author website, is really stuff about the book and what's in there. And that's when you can really set up times for me to talk to a team or do a speaking engagement. And that's just nickcidado.com.
That's Cidado.
Correct,
right?
yeah.
Nick Cidado.
Yep.
Do you have any big plans for the launch day, or just going to take it easy? And
No, just another day.
Yeah.
I'll be coaching the athletes. They're all excited.
Yeah.
They've been asking me, are you going to do a book signing? We're all bringing our books.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Within athletics at BC, I'll sign a bunch of books
Yeah.
for them. But as far as that, just another day. We're in the preseason for lacrosse.
Yep.
So that nothing's going to change there. Just coaching those girls up and get ready for our first game next week.
slip that book in front of Jeff Hafley when he gives his next press conference, right?
I should.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
When are you? Is golf a spring sport or a fall sport?
Technically, their championship season's in the spring.
In the spring, okay.
Even though they do have a fall non-traditional season, they
Yeah.
call it. But yeah, the golf teams are looking pretty good.
That looks good too, huh?
Yeah. So
Nice.
I'm in a really fortunate situation. Our athletic teams at BC are very high caliber, and our athletes are great.
Yeah. It's pretty cool though. You went from being an athlete to finding your passion in life and going on, and now you're an author. I mean, you
Yeah,
know.
it is pretty crazy, and it hits a lot of people when I say that. In my maturation as a coach, I actually fell in love with the process of training
Yeah.
more than the sport
Yeah.
itself once I got to college, which blows a lot of people out of the water,
Yeah.
but it's true.
Yeah.
Well, that's what a lot of people talk about. It's the journey, not the destination a lot of times. And,
Absolutely.
And it's great that you're able to do that. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Well, Nick, thank you so much for coming, and best of luck. If you ever want to come back and do another thing, just let us know.
I would love to.
You get another book. You're a Holliston guy now, so
There you go.
so you gotta do that. So thank you very much
Awesome.
for coming.
Thank you guys for having me.
Great,
Thanks a
very
lot.
great.
Thank you.
Nick Cidado at Nick Cidado, Cidado.com. Right?
Perfect.
Get him, hire him. You heard him today. He's good speaker, great speaker. Carlos, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jay.
For Jay Wyman, this is SporTView. Thank you and good night.